Thank you, moderator. Thank you. Okay, then. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the August 11, 2022 California Board of Behavioral Sciences meeting. My name is Max Disposti, pronouns AMS. I'm the chairperson of the board. Before we convene, I would like to remind everyone that's present that the board is a consumer protection agency that is charged with administering and enforcing the board's laws. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. The Board of Behavioral Sciences will be holding this public meeting in person and via WebEx platform. I will announce when we are accepting public comments on the various issues. And for each public comments period, we will first accepting comments from the participants that are present here in the room. And then the moderator will open the lines as appropriate so that the remote audience members can comment as well. Each commentator will have 2 minutes to comment. And at this point, moderator, if you would like to please provide the audience instruction on how they might participate during the meeting and, of course, at the appropriate times. Thank you.
Of course. So when we open up public comment, I will announce and also put up instructions on the WebEx screen. For members of the audience who are on WebEx, there will be a Q&A button down at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen where you can type either comment or I wish to make a public comment. Additionally, you can also use the raise hand feature, which will appear next to your name on WebEx. And if you're a call-in only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device and then lowering your hand again if you click *3. When we get to public comment, once again, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 15-second warning, and a prompt will appear on your device to unmute your mic. You'll want to click that unmute me button so then you can speak. Once the 2 minutes are up, you'll be muted and we'll move on to our next individual. And I believe that is all my instructions, so I'll pass it back over to our board chair.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, moderator, and good morning to you as well. Now it's time for us to call the roll call. For our board members, please, when you introduce yourself, just tell us if you're a public member or a licensed member of the board. And Christina, if we can call the roll. Thank you.
Good morning. Max Disposti.
Here.
Chris Jones.
Public member and chair. Setting the right side.
Chris Jones.
Here. Here, vice chair and LEP member.
Ross Ehrlich.
Here, public member.
Justin Huft.
Here, LMFT member.
Abigail Ortega.
Here, LCSW member.
And remotely, Kelly Ronasingi.
Here, public member.
John Sovek.
Present, LMFT, pronouns are he, him.
Dr. Annette Walker.
Present, public board member, she, her, and hers.
Yvette Caceres Willis.
Public member. Here, public member.
Thank you. For the record, Susan Friedman and Wendy Strack are absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. We're now moving to our second agenda item, which is public comments for items that are not on the agenda. I remind everyone the next agenda item will be the one for suggestions of future agenda items. I know sometimes people get confused with that. For this public item, public comments on item not on the agenda, I just would like to remind the board that we might not discuss or take action on any of the matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda on a future meeting. Each commentator will have 2 minutes. First of all, I start from my fellow board member. If there are any public comments or items that are on the agenda, anything you would like to share, this is the time to do it. Looking at that. Right. It's nice to see in person because I can see you actually. Body language is everything. Thank you. And moderator, if you can please open to our audience. And then we have, actually, before we open to the audience, we have people present here that would like to make a comment. Thank you so much for noticing that. Please come forward. Christina? I believe this is the, yeah, thank you. Please introduce yourself for the record, and thank you so much.
I'm Atim Boykin. I graduated from USF in 2010, started school in 2008, worked full-time. I've been in the nonprofit sector for over 20 years. It took me a while to get the hours, supervision hours. I'm an MFT. I scheduled the ethics exam, passed it in 2018. All my colleagues are all licensed. And then I scheduled the clinical exam for April 2020. Well, if I failed, I would have been given an extension. But because of those unforeseen circumstances, I wasn't able to fail or to pass. I contacted the board and asked if I can have a new date. They said I timed out. That's a barrier. Now I'm forced to start my hours over after giving over 20 years of my time to the social services of California. I'm also co-founder of Young Adult Court in San Francisco. That's what I was doing when I probably should have been taking the test, working full-time, making sure a program existed. I flew all the way out here from Portland, Maine, just so that I can guarantee that to be heard. My wife and I and my baby live in Portland, Maine. I also have a studio in California. I can't work with my colleagues in California, and I can't transfer a California license if I don't even have an opportunity to take it. So this has been heavy on me and my family. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to be flexible for something that's not your fault or mine. I need to take the clinical examination. I even scheduled to take the suicide assessment and prevention course. I haven't passed it yet, but I understand that's a new regulation. But I think it's unfair that I've timed out and don't have the opportunity to have an extension because of the pandemic. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for coming forward. Sorry I couldn't catch your last name, so if you don't mind.
Boykin, B-O-Y-K-I-N. First name is A-T-I-I-M.
Thank you, Mr. Boykin. Thank you for coming here, flying from out of state for that. Or we can do, as I mentioned before, we cannot address the specific issue. We could perhaps recommend staff to reach out to you, explain a little bit about the procedures and what can be done or not. And I know the staff will take in consideration your name and reach out to you directly. So thank you again for being here, sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Who do I give my contact information to?
They will reach out to you, Christina Kitamun. Thank you again. Anyone else from the public that is present? Oh, yeah. That we cannot interact with the... they will follow up with staff, yeah, just because otherwise we breach the conversation on them. Yes, Steve, our executive officer. Oh, you were offering to contact as well. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Staff will follow through with that. Any other person that is present from the audience that would like to make a comment?
Before we move on, President.
Yes, Dr. Walker.
Comment on this. I'm clear on our boundaries here, but I would like to know, as a new public board member, what is the time frame on us getting back on this situation or any other similar situation? What is the turnaround time?
Now, honestly, I'll be talking with Mr. Boykin after I get off here.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. So making sure there are no other comments from the public that are present, so I can move in our webinar platform, including also our board member that is watching us. Moderator, if you can please open.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public on WebEx, if you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access those features and make their request. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, moderator. Okay, so that will conclude our public comments for item not in the agenda. We're moving to agenda item 3, which is for suggestions for future agenda items. For my board member, just as a clarification, tomorrow actually we'll go in the merit of all the suggested agenda items that have been proposed in the past and what is the state in regards to discussions and so forth. But this is an opportunity for you if you have any suggestions for future agenda items. So I referring to our board member first, and then we're going to the public. Nothing here on my left. Nothing here on my right. And yes, I see our board member on the web, Kelly. Go ahead, moderator. Yeah.
Honorable Chair, thank you. I would just ask that a future agenda item be added for our September calendar date or October calendar date for a domestic violence resolution for our clinicians and therapists that provide domestic violence services.
Thank you. I see you just froze. I believe that was it. Okay, thank you. That's being recorded. Are there any suggestions for our future agenda items for the members or in the public right here? No. So moderator, if you could please open to the public in case there are any suggestions as well. Thank you.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you. Wonderful. That also concludes the agenda item 3, and we're moving into our petitioner hearing. At this time, we can actually begin our petitioner hearing, and today's proceedings will be conducted by our judge on the left, Matthew Block. Good morning, Judge. Thank you for being here with us, and from now on, the meeting will be yours.
All right, thank you. Calling a item out of order, the matter of the petition for early termination by Mary Lou Torres. Are you Ms. Torres? All right, good morning. Ms. Torres, ordinarily we would have a court reporter transcribing the proceedings. I know you heard the board is recording, but do you stipulate that I can record this electronically for Office of Administrative Hearings?
You can record it.
All right, and Ms. Crawford, do you stipulate as well?
Yes.
All right. So I am starting the recording now. All right, we're on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences to review the petition for early termination of Mary Lou Torres. This is BBS case number 2002-019-002-946. It's Office of Administrative Hearings case number 2022-070-318. My name is Matthew Block. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings, and I've been assigned to preside over the hearing this morning. We've already established that there is a quorum present, but for our record, may I please have all members of the board identify themselves, starting with the board member farthest to my right.
Abigail Ortega, LCSW member.
Justin Huft, LMFT member.
Yvette Caceres-Willis, public member.
Max Disposti, public member and board chair.
Chris Jones, LEP member and vice chair.
John Sovak, LMFT.
Dr. Annette Walker, public member.
Ross Ehrlich, public member.
All right, thank you. And may I have the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General.
Oh, we have an online board member. I'm sorry.
This is Board Member Kelly Runesinger, public member appearing remotely pursuant to COVID protocol.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, Ms. Crawford.
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522 in order to assist the panel in fact-finding and ensure public protection.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Torres is present. And Ms. Torres, you're representing yourself?
Yes, I am.
All right. Is your microphone on, Ms. Torres?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Torres, before we began off record, I kind of explained the procedures we would follow this morning. As I said, Ms. Crawford is going to present first to introduce your petition and to provide an overview of the case. After that, you'll have the opportunity to testify under oath as to why you believe this petition should be granted. You may call witnesses if you choose and introduce evidence if you choose, but your testimony and any witnesses that you call will be subject to cross-examination by Ms. Crawford and by the board, okay? The board is particularly concerned with the rehabilitation that you may have engaged in. The board has had the benefit of receiving and reviewing your petition packet, so it's unnecessary to repeat everything that you've already included. After the hearing, the board will go into closed session to deliberate. You won't have a decision today, but at a date at some point in the future, okay?
Okay.
Do you have any questions before we begin?
No.
All right. Ms. Crawford, are you prepared to proceed?
Yes,
All right. And Ms. Crawford, is your microphone on as well?
it is.
All right. Thank you. Go ahead.
Your Honor, I did provide the petitioner with the petition packet that I've also provided you with today, and in it are 5 exhibits that we'd like to introduce. The first exhibit is a memo to the board from the probation analyst, and that probation analyst is present today in case the board has any questions, and that is Mr. Craig Zimmerman. So we'd like to introduce that memo to the board at this time.
Ms. Torres, do you have any objection to Exhibit 1 being received in evidence?
No, it's fine.
All right. Exhibit 1 will be received for all purposes.
Exhibit 2 is the petition for early termination of probation and the attachments and support provided by the petitioner. They would also like marked and introduced.
Ms. Torres, any objection to Exhibit 2?
No objection.
All right. Exhibit 2 will be received for all purposes with the exception of the letters, which would be received as administrative hearsay.
Exhibit 3, Your Honor, there is an error. It reads decision in the matter of the petition for reinstatement, and it references another probationer's name. If you could just cross that out, and it's the bottom portion of Exhibit 3 on the exhibit list that states stipulated settlement and disciplinary order statement of issues. That is what we would be introducing today on behalf of Ms. Torres, and we would like that marked and introduced.
Ms. Crawford, where in Exhibit 3 does it state?
I'm sorry. I'm referencing the exhibit list.
Oh, I see. Okay. Any objection to Exhibit 3, Ms. Torres?
No.
All right. Exhibit 3 will be received for all purposes.
Exhibit 4 is the certification of registration history. Would like that marked and introduced.
Any objection, Ms. Torres?
No.
All right. Exhibit 4 will be received for all purposes.
And Exhibit 5 is a notification of hearing to the petitioner of today's hearing date that we would want marked and introduced at this time.
Any objection, Ms. Torres?
No.
Exhibit 5 will be received for all purposes.
Your Honor, with regards to Exhibit 2, on AGO 008, there is a letter from Ms. Torres's therapist dated July 14, 2022. I wanted to see if the board members also have a copy of this letter. It was a late addition to their packet. If not, Ms. Torres has brought copies for all the board members.
I was provided a copy of that letter this morning.
And the board members were too.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Your Honor, I don't have any other information to introduce at this time, and I can provide the board with a background of this case.
Please.
The petitioner was issued a licensed marriage and family therapist license on August 1 of 2014, and it will expire on November 30th of 2023. On June 13th of 2019, the petitioner applied for an associate marriage and family therapist registration. Her application was denied on July 30th of 2019 because she had committed crimes of dishonesty, which included petty theft from a clothing store in 2018, driving on a suspended license in 2007 and causing a collision and leaving the scene, presenting forged checks to a local check cashing store for which she was convicted of forgery and second-degree commercial burglary in 2007, and conviction of a DUI and resisting and obstructing a police officer in 2006. Additionally, when she applied for registration in 2019, she failed to disclose her 2006 conviction for DUI and resisting an officer. A statement of issues was filed on October 4th, 2019, and the board adopted the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order on April 1st of 2020, which immediately revoked, stayed, and placed the petitioner on probation for 3 years with optional standard terms and conditions. 8 months remain on her probation time, which is set to terminate on April 1st of 2023. The petitioner did enter into a stipulated settlement where she was required to attend a psychological evaluation, weekly psychotherapy, a law and ethics course, and comply with standard conditions of probation. She is compliant in all aspects of her probation.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Ms. Torres, are you prepared to testify this morning?
Yes, I am.
Just so we know, do you intend to call any other witnesses?
No, I don't.
All right. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm, under penalty of perjury, that the testimony you'll give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
All right, thank you. For our record, would you please state and spell your full name?
My name is Mary Lou Torres, and it's spelled MaryLouTorrez.
All right, thank you, Ms. Torres. Ms. Torres, since you're representing yourself, what I'm going to do is essentially let you testify in the narrative. If you did have an attorney, they would be asking you the questions, but I'm going to let you have the floor to testify freely. This is your opportunity to tell the board what you want them to know in terms of the rehabilitation that you've participated in and your background. So at this point, I'm going to yield the floor to you.
Thank you. So I've been able to follow through with the stipulations that the Board of Behavioral Sciences was given to me. I was granted a probationary AMFT registration number in April of 2020, and I've been able to serve and practice. In probationary period, you know, with my AMFT, I've been able to be in counseling, and also I went through a psychiatric evaluation, and I also took a law and ethics course. And on top of that, I've been rehabilitating, which is the therapy. There's also a letter which I provided this morning that, you know, I've been able to be compliant with the stipulations, and I know my termination is coming up next year, but I would like to be considered to be terminated early because I'm compliant with everything. And, well, the charges that I have are mainly back in 2006 and 2007. The most recent one was in 2018, which I did have I went to a program, I forget, but it's called hold on, it's a rehabilitation program that they sent me to. I know I saw it in here somewhere. It was where I had to go to rehabilitate in counseling after I received that last charge. And then other than that, I've been able to, you know, learn from my mistakes. I've been able to help my clients. I learned that, you know, people make mistakes, but it's about starting life over. And I believe in that. And the people I help, I have clients who I see, you know, who have made mistakes, and I want to support them and continue being able to practice with my AMC registration number.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Torres. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you. Ms. Torres, can you explain why you didn't disclose your 2006 DUI conviction?
So they were so old that I thought I only had a DUI in my background. So when I sent in the application for my AMFT registration, I disclosed the DUI. I did not know, like when I was pulled over that day, I was severely intoxicated back in 2006. And so I did not know that they had charged me with the obstruction of an officer, and I think it was The driving with a suspended license, I got it later, but I was unaware that those were in my background. So when I submitted my application, I failed to disclose because I wasn't aware that I had those misdemeanor charges in my background.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing since you've been placed on probation as far as employment?
Yeah, so I've been working for a nonprofit where I basically gained all my hours. I actually just completed my hours, and I'm studying right now for the licensing exam. I've been able to help families and children and couples working to also I work with providing parenting classes. And recently I moved to another private company where I'm working with people who have a drug and addiction along with a mental health disorder. So it's very good to be able to work with people because, you know, obviously back in 2006 I did have an alcohol problem, and I was able to, you know, attend AA meetings. I was able to get therapy, and I haven't had a problem with alcohol since. And recently I work with, you know, people that have drug addictions, and I support them, and I've been able to help out a few people where they go to the groups, the support groups, the talk therapy, and I support them, and they see that there is hope on their end for them to change their life around.
What support do you receive from mentors or or colleagues at your organization in relation to the kind of work that you do? So I have group supervision and individual supervision. I have a great relationship with my, supervisor for the programs, but also with the supervisor, with the clinical supervisors. So anytime that I have a question in regards to any doubt that I have or any support that I need, they're a phone call away where I can call them anytime, and they have that open door policy. It's like, call me whenever you need anything. And so I've built a really great relationship with all my supervisors, and they've been able to support me throughout, these last couple of years since I started my internship, and since I've been able to accumulate my hours and continue, hopefully, to get licensed in the future. So what does a group supervision look like for you in your employment? Group supervision, we meet every Friday, and we discuss clients' cases. We also discuss any transference or countertransference. What countertransference or transference is when sometimes feelings come up for you that triggers something, and we discuss that during supervision. It's a 2-hour group supervision, so right now we have that every Friday from 2 to 4 p.m. And my boss is actually a psychologist, and so we process any type of feelings that come up. We discuss cases, and we also review law and ethics questions that can help us, continue to use best practices in our field. And what does the individual supervision look like? Individual supervision is also on Fridays, and it's from 1 to 2 p.m., and that is with my boss, and he is a psychologist, and that one we discuss, our notes, cases, client concerns, plans of action, treatment planning for our clients, and also if we have anything, personal that we need to discuss with him, we always discuss that as well, and he provides us support during that individual 1-hour supervision. Is that 1-hour supervision with your boss something that is regularly scheduled, or is it only for the time that you're on probation with the board? No, that's all the time. Like, even if I stop my probation and gets terminated tomorrow, I will continue those group and individual supervisions with my boss. Now, you're also presently in counseling. How long have you been attending counseling? So I believe I started because it was a little bit difficult to find a therapist and to get my insurance to cover it, but I was able to get Paula Manning. She's an LCSW, and she's the one that wrote the letter. So I believe I was
set to start in April when I got my AMSU registration number, but I started a few months after that. But I've been seeing her, and I still continue to see her. And even after my probation period ends, I'm still going to continue because it's very helpful for me to just check in with someone on a weekly basis and just to discuss what's going on, my career goals, everything that has happened and happens during work. It's great just to have a therapist support on a weekly basis.
So you have been attending weekly throughout the entire time that you've been seeing Ms. Manning?
I started weekly, I think, for the first year, and then I asked my monitor, Craig Zimmerman, if I can diminish it to biweekly. So we do biweekly sessions.
Why did you want to switch to biweekly?
Because it was a little bit difficult with my work schedule. So after the year had passed, I asked him if we can diminish that, and we just did that. He approved that.
When you first went into counseling, were there any goals that you set for yourself that you were hoping to achieve in counseling?
As far as like career goals or?
Any goals that you were wanting to obtain from counseling sessions?
Oh yeah, well definitely wanted to, learn how to continue regulating my emotions. I wanted to make sure that I complied with all the requirements, and my therapist, she continued to support me and kind of guide me to this is the direction that you need, and kind of helping me, talk with her through talk therapy, just seeing what I needed to achieve through like my emotions, and also making sure that I'm stable, and I also like take some medication, so making sure that I'm compliant with my medication.
And she was aware of your criminal history, correct?
Yeah, I had to give her a copy of the stipulation, and then she had to approve it, and she had to sign a consent to be able to speak with my monitor.
Okay. And when you had your most recent criminal conviction in, I believe, 2018, the court had placed you on a mental health diversion program for 2 years.
Yeah.
And was she aware of that program that you were in? Okay.
Yeah, I told her myself. She knows everything about me because we have a really good, close relationship. And also she read it in the paperwork that I provided to her.
So in what way was she able to continue the intents of that program for you in counseling?
So the first year, since from 2020 to 2021, it was every week. We talk about how are you feeling, what's going on with you, are you feeling stressed? Because this field, it is very stressful to deal with other people's emotions, and it's very challenging. So always discussing about, are you feeling stressed? Are you practicing self-care? How are you working with your work schedule? How are you managing your clients? Overall, also in my personal life, how are you doing spending time with your family? And also, she always encouraged me to, she knew the things that I had to comply with probation. She was very supportive, and she told me you have to take the law and ethics class, and she kind of gave me like a referral to a school where I was able to take that law and ethics class. And then she would always ask me, oh, when are you going to get your psychiatric evaluation? She was always on top of asking me those things, and then I was able to just, she was very encouraging and very motivating, and she's just always very supportive with everything that's happening in my life.
Did you learn something in the mental health diversion or through your counseling about why you committed your most recent crimes in 2018?
Yeah, so I learned that since I'm on medication, that I need to be stable on my medication and always take it, and I've learned that I need to be in therapy. So for me, therapy is going to be probably like a long-term process. Like even after I get my probation terminated, I'm going to continue seeing Paula just because she's been a great support system. And I've just learned that, I have to be aware of my feelings and my thoughts. And I can't always act on impulse, because that's been reasons that I've gotten into trouble. Back in 2006, back in 2007, I had no impulse control. And back in 2018, when I took that shirt, I acted on impulse. I didn't think about the consequences that was going to happen to me. And now I every time I think about something, you know, I have to say, okay, what are the consequences? Where is this going to lead me? Is this going to, you know, ruin my life? Is this going to ruin my reputation? Because now I'm a counselor. I'm an AMFT. I represent people. I represent their families, their children. So thinking before I act, it has been a huge change for me, and Paula has helped me to accept that I have to think before I act.
At the time that you committed the acts in 2018, were you in schooling for your registration?
I think I was still in school. I hadn't completed school.
And you're saying that despite the fact that you were in school for your career path, you still lacked that impulse control?
Yeah. I wasn't aware that I was, you know, making a bad choice then.
Were you also not consistently on your medication? You said you weren't.
Yeah, that month I got off of my medication, and so it minimized my impulse control.
And what about your law and ethics course? What topics were covered there that were helpful to you in relation to your rehabilitation?
So I had a great instructor. I actually took the law and ethics course at Pepperdine, California University, and it was really great because I learned, you know, that as marriage and family therapists, we're mandated reporters. We have the duty to protect our clients, to protect children from child abuse, to be honest, that my role as right now I'm an associate, but hopefully when I get licensed, my role as a licensed therapist is I have to be a presentable and an honest person of this community, of any community that I work for. I have to present myself in a higher standard with higher morals. And you know, people depend on me. And so whenever, you know, I have to report an abuse or an elder abuse, it's like I learned those topics about child abuse, elder abuse, about my own practice, about having supervision, about being honest with my clients, about countertransference and transference. You know, it was a whole semester, and it actually that course helped me pass my law and ethics test because I was able to understand the way the law works and the seriousness of my role in my practice.
When did you take that course?
I don't have a date, but I know that I took my test, I believe in 2020, so it was that semester of it was fall semester of 2020.
Since you were placed on probation, and I know you've got a very stressful job, but have there been other incidents that have, other stressful situations you faced where you've been able to deal with those situations differently?
Yeah, it's just sometimes, you know, you carry a load of emotion for your clients, so it's just about making sure that I attend my supervisions, my individual, my group supervisions, that I attend my, you know, sessions with my therapist, that I practice self-care. And of course, you know, we all went through the pandemic, you know, COVID. It was very stressful, and I was sent to work from home. So, you know, at one point, you kind of like are at home and you want to get out. So I would practice exercising and going on mindfulness walks and practicing a lot of meditation just to make sure that I'm okay to be okay for my clients.
So you are asking to terminate your probation about 8 months early. What assurances can you give the board that you will maintain the current standard that you've set for yourself, even when you're no longer being monitored by the board?
Well, I will continue to be in therapy. That's going to be my promise that I've made to myself because I know I need it. For me, therapy is going to be long-term. I'm going to be, you know, taking my medication every day because that's going to monitor me and regulate, you know, my impulse control. And also, for sure, is practicing self-care, making sure that I attend my weekly and individual and group supervisions, and, just continue to take this into another level, because right now I'm studying for my licensing exam. So this next step for me is to continue, helping people in the long run, people that have been in the same place where you make a mistake, but you can learn from your mistake and repair, those strained relationships and be a better person, going back to school and making a better life for those individuals that I help, encouraging them and motivating them. And I've made myself the promise that I'm done with getting in trouble with the law, that I need to leave that in the past, and I need to live an honest and faithful life to myself and think about my clients, because if I were to do an unlawful act, I lose my license, I lose my life, I lose my clients. And I really do like this career path. It gives me self-fulfillment to be able to help others.
How would early termination, if that's granted, affect your life or your practice?
Well, it's been a financial hardship. It's very pricey. Having to go through the law and ethics course, I had to pay out of pocket, and it was a private university, and then so it's going to help me just save a little bit more money.
Is there any impact on your professional career if you remain on probation?
It probably will, because I've been wanting to switch, work for other jobs, and every time I let people know that I'm on probation, they look at me weird, and they look at me funny, like if I'm a criminal, and I'm not a criminal anymore. And so once I'm off probation, I want to apply for a better job, and hopefully continue just doing better.
And what would be a better job?
There's a job that I want to apply for. It's an intake clinician job, and it's a better salary, and it's for another nonprofit, and they have really good benefits. So I was talking to their HR manager, and so hopefully, I can just a better job just for myself with bigger benefits, and somewhere where I can continue helping the community. But this job that I'm actually looking forward to applying for in the future is an intake clinician, where I just continue helping children that are in crisis and assessing them. And then depending on what their needs are, we refer them to services.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Crawford. At this point, I will turn to the board, and just moving from right to left, Ms. Ortega, do you have any questions for Ms. Torres?
Yes. Hi, Ms. Torres. Thank you for sharing. I heard the impact, right, of remaining on probation for the next 8 months for you, and I would love to hear, what opportunities did you hear from, this experience, from being on probation? Did it open up anything for you? Do you think it, created something new for you in your life to be on probation?
Yeah, definitely. It gave me the opportunity to reflect on the mistakes that I've done in the past, and to really, because it kind of all my stuff, everything here is public. So when you look up my AMFT registration number, you click on this little star, and everything that I've ever done, even if it was 15 years ago, or if it was 4 years ago, it's there. So it kind of, when other people read it, if I go apply to a job and they read it, they look at me differently, because, I want to be looked as a counselor now, someone who helps people. I don't want to be looked as, I don't think the mistakes that I did in the past should define me. And it's taught me that, it's been a hard 2 years being on probation, because that's why I haven't really moved companies, because where I'm at, they accept me, and they know that I'm trying hard and I have a good reputation. and they see that I work well with my clients. But it's been hard, like emotionally and financially, to be on probation. It's been challenging. It hasn't been an easy 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything further, Ms. Ortega? Okay, Mr. Huff?
Hi, yes. Thank you for talking, and this is a very challenging conversation, so thank you. I have a couple questions. You talked a little bit about what your therapy looks like. It sounds like in some ways it's an extension of your group and individual supervision. You talked about going over caseload and transference and scheduling. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about impulse control and what that has looked like, because it sounds like that could have been maybe a focus of the treatment.
Yeah, so we were able to discuss, I don't know, well, you're a licensed, right, MLFT, so you know about cognitive distortions, that cognitive distortions are sometimes, negative thoughts that, you have. So being able to work through that and being able to not react on your immediate thought or your immediate feeling. And, there's a cognitive triangle where she was able to teach me that I could have a thought, I could have a feeling, but I could reframe it to something more positive, and that I can manage and control my instant emotion or my instant thought, that I don't have to be defined by that I have a choice to make, and I've chosen to make better choices.
Thank you. And I think that, just my last question, you've put quite a bit of effort into your discussion around talking about how much good work you've been doing with your clients. I'd like you to talk a little bit more about some examples where you've shown better impulse control outside of your work.
Okay. So outside of my scope, thank you. Well, just, being able to be a law-abiding citizen. If I ever go out for drinks now, I don't drive, I'll take an Uber, making those decisions just because I don't want to put myself at risk or someone else at risk. Also, getting along with my coworkers, making sure that I don't react if someone says something to offend me, like one of my coworkers, if they say something that I don't like, making sure that, I discuss it with them and say, hey, I don't like the way you talk to me. And there's always a solution, to everything now, that I don't have to react on that emotion or on that instant, feeling that I get.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Caceres-Willis?
Can you hear me? Thank you for coming today. I want to talk a little bit about, you've talked about your supervised, sessions and the support you get from your, the people that you work with. Do you have support in your personal life, family members? Who do you lean on, to talk to outside of work?
So I'm a Jehovah's Witness. I actually learned the faith recently, and that has helped me. That's like my self-care. So I consider myself a spiritual person on my personal life. On top of, my career, I attend my church meetings twice a week. I'm involved with the community to provide spiritual support, on top of helping, my clients. I also help people from the community, to see the spiritual aspect of life. And I'm also married, and then, my husband is very supportive, and we do that work together. So I think that becoming a spiritual person has also helped me, see the way that God sees things. I believe in God, so outside of my career, I believe that He's given me a second chance to redo my life, because, when I got my forgery charge back in 2007, I did a year in jail. So I don't want to go back to that. It's been 15 years, and I have my freedom, I have my career. Hopefully I can have children later on, and hopefully, I can continue this life that I've hoped for.
Mr. Disposti?
Yes, just. Good morning, Ms. Torres. Thank you so much for being here. I just wanted to share we appreciate when people come forward, and also, sharing your story with everyone. It's a public hearing, so we understand how difficult it is. So I just wanted to share my gratitude to you moving forward and sharing your experience as well. One question, can you speak a little bit more about this work balance? Because I know the work that licensee do can be really, quite stressful, no matter if your clients are children or not. There is a lot of dynamics. So how do you balance? You did touch on that, but if you can a little bit elaborate more about what are your coping mechanisms to step back and say, okay, this is the time for me to pull the plug a little bit, because you have a lot of expectations towards yourself and the community and your faith base as well. So how do you negotiate that in terms of protecting yourself in a way that doesn't get you in trouble?
Why? For sure. My supervisors always encourage taking days off, so I take off at least, 2 days to 3 days a month, and I also, when they give me vacation, I try to go on vacation for at least a week every year. And then, I spend time with my family. I spend time with my husband. We just taking time to practice self-care and relaxing. And on my end, for my own mind, I practice meditation, I exercise, and, I take walks, especially, during the pandemic. I was working from home, seeing clients through, telephone, through, so I had to get outside. I had to be outdoors. I had to be at the beach. I had to meditate and then just get away from just being enclosed inside because the pandemic was definitely a difficult, challenging time for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. No further question. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Jones? Thank you for being here today. I do have a couple questions for you. You indicated you went through AA as part of the...
Yeah, I did back in 2006. I went for at least 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Did you just say that you're still drinking, that you go out for drinks with friends?
Yeah,
Can you tell us more about that?
I only drink like 1 or 2 because that's my limit, because I know that I went through AA. Back then, when I got pulled over, it had become a problem for me. I was drinking excessively that day that I drove intoxicated. It was actually a Super Bowl day, and I got pulled over, and I just was a mess, and I became angry, and that's why I was a little bit mean to the officer. But now, I can drink like a cup of wine or 2, but that's it. I don't overdo it. And even if when I mentioned that I go out and drink, if I have 1 or 2 drinks, that's my limit. I'll get an Uber, and I will not, drive under the influence.
Thank you. One other question. So there's if I'm doing the math right, it looks like there is about 11 years between the fraudulent act in 2007 and then the theft in 2018. I've heard you talk about the issues with impulse control. So and you mentioned that you were off your medication that month, but that's 11 years between incidents. Can you kind of enlighten us a little bit as to maybe what was going on at that point to break that 11-year streak?
I think I talked about it with my psychiatrist, and he lowered the medication, and I think that's what ended up for me was a disbalance. And then, I was in school, so I was obviously really stressed. So it was a stressful moment for me, and so I happened to just see the shirt, and I did not think about it, and I put it in my purse, and I'm an idiot because it ruined my whole registration process, because I had a clean streak. I hadn't had any charges since 2006, since 2007, and I picked that up, and it ruined my life. So I see that it was, when I thought about it, when I saw the shirt, I should have just paid for it because I had the money to do it. But it was just, I saw it and I took it, So for me, it's like I can't do that anymore. I'm not going to take things that don't belong to me. So I've learned that it was, yes, I blame it on my medication, but I always have a choice, and that's what I tell my clients. You always have a choice. You have to choose the right thing. That now I think about it, it's like is it going to lead me to lose my license? Because that's my career now. That's what pays my bills. So am I going to act this way, or am I going to live a healthy, ethical life? Because I need to be a servant of the community. And plus now, like, that I'm a spiritual person, I know that God dislikes those things, so I have to know that I can't be acting like that, because I don't want to, do things that he's not going to like.
Thank you. No further questions. All right, thank you. Mr. Silva?
Thank you. Hello, my name's John. What pronouns would you like me to use for you?
She, hers.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Torres, I'm also an LMFT, so I've traveled your journey as well. I'm intrigued by some timeline things, just like Mr. Jones was. One of them has to do with the court-ordered program. If I'm reading this correctly, that was started in 2019. It said mental health diversion program in the paperwork here. That was a 2-year program. Mm-hmm. And then you also say you started individual therapy in 2020. Were you doing those two things simultaneously?
No, I finished those because the charge was in 2018. So I did the diversion program and I ended that. And
you did a full 2 years?
I think that I think I did a year. I don't remember, but I think I did a year, and then I went back to court, and then they accepted a year, and then they got rid of that misdemeanor. I think that's what happened. I'm not sure, but I know it was back in 2018.
And what would you say were your biggest takeaways from that program?
Well, definitely learning, impulse control, learning about my cognitive distortions, learning about how I have choices and how I need to, I've been able to make good choices for me. I was able to go back to school. I was able to get a bachelor's, I was able to get a master's. So I just have to continue on making good choices for myself.
Okay. So you've mentioned you have an ongoing relationship with alcohol use, mm-hmm. and that you feel you have a pretty okay one with it, maybe a glass here or two as a social thing, correct?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
What are your thoughts about the idea that alcohol could have an effect on impulse control, or the idea that alcohol could have an effect on the medication you're taking for impulse control? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, I don't really, that's why I don't drink a lot, because if I know that alcohol is a substance, and so it could have a bad effect on my medication. So that's why I take my medication every day. And so when I do socially drink, I will limit it to 1 or 2, but nothing more. I don't ever want to go through the time where I drank 10 drinks, drove under the influence and then got my DUI. I see that that's an issue. And then I've been through AA, and they know that, as if you identify as an alcoholic, you shouldn't even be drinking. So I minimize my drinking.
So then your personal self-reflection is that up to 2 drinks does not affect your impulse control?
It's my limit, but it probably does affect impulse control.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a substance. So any type of substance that you put in your body changes you.
Okay. So I want to kind of switch gears a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And as an LMFT, we are entrusted with a lot of confidential and private information for people. We're also, through billing, provided with financial information. We have a lot of responsibilities we have to hold on to. What do you believe, as an AMFT, mm-hmm. hoping to be an LMFT, would be your primary responsibilities to maintain those standards of privacy and confidentiality?
When I'm referring with my client, mm-hmm. Well, definitely, we have the confidentiality, we have the consent forms, we have the limits of confidentiality, which, I don't disclose anything that my client tells me, unless I suspect child abuse. That's when I have to break my confidentiality. But when it comes down to my clients, it's whatever they tell me stays with me. Unless I suspect child abuse or elder abuse, that's when I would have to breach confidentiality. Or if it's my duty to protect someone where they say, I want to hurt my roommate, and she's my client, I have to warn that roommate, and I would have to warn the police. But those are those times that it's limited to breaching that confidentiality.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then just final kind of more reflection from you. you've used the word being in compliance quite a few during this testimony and conversation. And I would be curious from you to hear, what do you believe is the difference between being in compliance and actually experiencing growth and change from this process you've been through? And that's my final question.
Well, definitely it's been a huge learning experience. I think that the board has its rules for a reason, and if I was put on probation, it was for a reason. And it's been challenging because, I've had to spend money on, getting the law and ethics class, my psychiatric evaluation, paying my therapist, paying the board $1,200 every year, but it's been worth it because they've been keeping me under control, and it's been helping me, So it's kind of been like a guidance, and I'm actually thankful that they gave me my license to practice, because if they didn't, I would have been very sad about it. So I'm glad that they gave me that chance. They're like, here's your license. We're going to monitor you. You have to, grow. You have to be challenged. You have to learn. And it's definitely taught me a lot to be these past 2 years and change, because it's been 2 years and change. So I've learned that as a person that I need to take my responsibility, my role in the community seriously. I'm not playing around. And this is not ha. I lose my life if I ever go back to these old impulses,
All right. Thank you. Dr. Walker?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Torres. You set me up for the perfect segue here, okay, because I really have two specific questions, but I'm going to continue along the thought of thoughts that you just mentioned in regards to your professional conduct, if you will. So let me start with this question. You did mention that you took the law and ethics class in fall of 20. Was that your first time taking that class, or share with me if you have taken that class
No,
previously?
I think it was the first time that I took it, because I had never taken a law and ethics course.
Okay. Can you share with me what your takeaways were? You did briefly touch on them, but that course is required for MFTs for a particular reason and others. And so can you tell me the impact that course had on your experience?
Yeah, well, it definitely was a semester, where I learned, all the law and ethics, as my role is in my professional work. And it helped me prepare for life, to take things seriously moving forward. So it was I can see why the probationary monitor suggests it, because it opened up my eyes to see, what my role is. And also, it prepared me too, because I learned all these guidelines that I have to follow, and it's serious thing. It's serious, So I see my role as a therapist. It's like people depend on me. My clients depend on me, to keep them, to keep their whatever they tell me confidential, to make sure that I do the correct paperwork, to make sure I file reports when needed. It was just, it was a whole semester. And the instructor, he was a really good instructor, and we did tests during, the course, and we did presentations, and we talked about, different situations, like what if you're confronted with this, how are you going to react? What's going to be your role in making the right decision for your client, but also following the law?
Okay. I heard you say in your testimony that you learned that people make mistakes. And I think you specifically looked at your experience by saying you learned that people make mistakes by helping others that share similar challenges as yourself, correct?
Yeah.
So what personal advice would you give to your peers?
To my peers or my clients?
To your peers.
My peers.
I'm looking at you as a professional, and given your experiences in this whole journey that you've had.
Yeah.
And taking the law and ethics course, where I hear you saying that you did learn and take away how your personal and professional conduct impacts what you do greatly.
Yeah.
So given what you've gone through, what advice professional advice would you give to your peers so that they can avoid maybe some of the things that you've gone through that you would not want to relive yourself? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, definitely. I have a lot to say. Like, you have to take your role even as an intern. I think when I started as an intern, because you're working under someone else's license, first of all, and even when you're an AMST, you're working under someone else's license. And it continues up until your license, because now you're working with your own license. And any mistake that you make, you can lose that in an instant. So you have to, and then you can also hurt others, because that's why we have all these rules and stipulations, because it's protecting the client, it's protecting you as a clinician. So I would let my peers know that ever since when you start in this career, that you have to take things seriously, because it's not, if you don't abide by the rules and stipulations, then you're not going to do your job the way you're supposed to do it. You're not going to serve the community the way that you're supposed to, and you're not going to be that role model that you're supposed to be.
My last question. So if you had taken that law and ethics course sooner, do you think it would have helped you in your personal life, your personal conduct, knowing that this is the career path that you're pursuing? Would it have helped you to get it sooner rather than later?
It would have, yes. Yes, because I think that I would have learned this, I learned it, later on, and I had already, picked up that charge. So I think it would have helped if I would have been in schooling and I would have taken this course. Then I would have seen, like, I would have thought, like, what am I doing?
Yeah. Thank you for your testimony this morning. I appreciate it.
Mr. Ehrlich? Good morning, Ms. Torres. Thank you again for coming in and giving your candid testimony. I know we all appreciate it. Some of my other board members have gotten to some of the questions I had. Quickly, the mental health diversion that you did in court after the 2018 incident, that was successfully completed?
Yes.
And did they dismiss your case
They
afterwards?
dismissed it, and actually they expunged it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that I think Mr. Jones had brought up, that there was probably some obligations that you had to do for that mental health diversion that were before what you had to do for the board. I was wondering if you can explain maybe some of the things that you were asked to do during that diversion.
Yeah, so I was instructed to attend support groups in regards, because it was a petty theft. So I was, instructed to attend support groups in regards to, stealing and being honest and doing any fraudulent actions. And then also it was therapy with also a therapist as well. That also, it was kind of like, it was a good start to what the board sent me to do, because I needed help then.
Okay. That's all that I have, so thank you again.
All right, thank you. Mr. Renessing?
Ms. Torres, you've mentioned that the law and ethics class was kind of an epiphany for you, that it really helped shape your mindset. Can you, I guess I'm a little confused. Can you sort of describe for me how that shift occurred when you took the law and ethics class and what your mindset was before?
So I guess I didn't take things seriously before the law and ethics. I didn't see, I was still a student, and so then when I got sent and I got my registration number and I took those law and ethics, I was already working in the field. So it just kind of helped me shift from being a student to now being in the practice of this is real. You have to, there's rules, there's a board, there's a seriousness to all of my decisions, all of my actions. There's consequences. And even now, when I think about treating my clients, making sure that, I sign the correct forms, that I report things. As a mandated reporter, I take that seriously. So all these, all these ethical guidelines, it was an eye-opener to see like how important and how, special and how, like it's strict. It's strict. Like there's no rule bending here. So that's what I was able to learn in my law and ethics course.
And I guess my other question is, Ms. Torres, how have you fostered empathy for potential victims for wrongful conduct? Have you developed that? The empathy and accountability that comes with the growth inside of a diversion program and inside of understanding the nature of your actions?
I think that I appreciate when there's diversion programs, because I think back then in 2007, I don't think there was diversion programs, but I didn't get sent to a diversion program. I got the opportunity in 2018, and it helped me so much. And also with the board, giving me this chance, like, we're going to give you this probationary license, and you can, work on yourself. Maybe if I would have been given this back in 2007, it would have helped me, and I would have gotten it then. But in 2007, they just threw me in jail. They threw me in jail.
I probably didn't phrase that question correctly. Have you developed empathy for the potential victims of wrongful conduct?
Yes, definitely. I can see, when I have clients, like right now I work with clients that have drug and alcohol abuse, and a lot of them are there because they're on probation. They have, drug charges, they have, theft charges, they have, all kind of burglary charges. So when I work with them, I have empathy because I know that they're trying hard, and then when they go to programs, I can support them in any way, emotional support, moral support, any way I can, in order for them to see that there is a way of doing a second chance. So I built a lot of empathy because I've been in that same place. I've made mistakes. And so when you see that, and for me, it's like I'm trying hard. And so if they're trying hard and they're there and they're working the program, I definitely have a lot of empathy for them.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Torres, your current employer is Wellmore, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it's WELMOR?
Yeah.
In Psychology Group?
Psychology Group, yeah.
And how long have you been there?
I've been there since March.
March of this year?
Of this year.
And prior to that, it was Helpline Youth Counseling?
Mm-hmm.
And was that essentially like a crisis hotline? Or?
No, Helpline was actually a nonprofit.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that's where I provided counseling and parenting classes to my clients.
And how long were you there?
I was there, I started as an intern, and then I got hired on as a paid employee in 2019. So I was there up until February of this year, since 2018 up until February this year.
So 2018, you said?
As an intern,
okay.
I started.
You mentioned that you have a bachelor's degree?
I do.
And where did you receive that?
From Cal State Northridge University in California.
And what is it in?
It's in business management.
And master's degree?
Master's in marriage and family therapy from Touro University.
Troy?
Touro University.
Could you spell it, please?
Touro University.
All right, thank you. Ms. Crawford, any follow-up questions based on any of mine or the board's?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Torres, I'm going to turn...
I stand one clarifying question.
Sure.
John Sovak, LMFT. When was your Touro program?
Touro, I believe I started in 17, and I graduated March of 19.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Torres, I am going to turn it back to you one more time. If there is anything that you want to let the board know, if any of our questions triggered something in your mind and you want to expand upon it, now's your opportunity, okay?
Okay. Let me catch my breath. I want to thank you for listening to me. It's been a hard process, but it's been a lot of growth, and it's been a lot of learning, and I can see why, the Board of Behavioral Sciences has these regulations, because you do believe in empathy and you do believe in second chances. And I know there's people who are licensed and they get their license taken away because they commit, you know, certain crimes. But for me, I was giving this at the beginning. So I think that moving forward, if I can, you know, I guess be forgiven and given that regular license, that since it was at the beginning of my license, that I'm going to work hard to make sure that, you know, it never gets taken away.
All right, thank you, Ms. Torres. Ms. Crawford, have I overlooked anything?
Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Torres, as I said, you won't have a decision today. The board will deliberate in a closed session, and you'll be notified of the decision at a date in the future, okay?
Okay.
So thank you for your testimony and for being here. I know the board appreciates it. With that, that concludes the petition hearing in this matter. The record is now closed. Case is submitted, and we are off the record.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Your Honor, if you're okay with that, maybe we can have 10 minutes break?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are reconvening at, it's 10:16 now, so 10:26. Thank you.
All right, we'll call the case the petition for early termination of probation of Ruben Gabriel Cologne. And did I pronounce your name right, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, okay, good morning. Mr. Cologne, you may have heard in the last hearing, I asked for a stipulation that the matter could be recorded electronically. Are you okay with that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Crawford, you consent on this one as well?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. I am going to start the recording then. All right, we are on the record in the before the Board of Behavioral Sciences to review the petition for early termination of probation of Ruben Gabriel Cologne. This is BBS case number 2002-021-002-427. It's Office of Administrative Hearings, case number 2022-070-303. Mr. Cologne, my name is Matthew Block, and I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings. I've been assigned to preside over your hearing this morning. We have already established that there is a quorum present, but for our record, if I could have the members of the board identify themselves, starting with Ms. Ortega.
Abigail Ortega, LCSW member.
Justin Huft, LMFT.
Yvette Caceres Willis, public member.
Max Disposti, public member and board chair.
Chris Jones, LEP member and vice chair.
John Sovek, LMFT.
Dr. Annette Walker, public member.
Ross Ehrlich, a public member.
Rena Singer, public member.
All right, thank you. May I have the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the Attorney General's Office and the people of the state of California.
All right, and Mr. Cologne is here, and you are representing yourself, correct, sir?
Correct, Your Honor.
Now, Mr. Cologne, I know you were in the room for the last hearing. We're going to follow a similar procedure. Ms. Crawford is going to present your petition, give an overview of your case. You'll then have the opportunity to testify, to call any witnesses that you may see fit, and then the board and Ms. Crawford will likely have some questions for you, okay?
Okay.
Similar to the last case, the board is concerned with the rehabilitation that you've engaged in. The board does have the petition packet, so you don't necessarily need to repeat everything that you included in that, but the board does want to hear about your rehabilitation, about your background, and about the changes that you've made since the discipline was imposed, okay?
Okay.
Do you have any questions of me before we begin?
No, I do not, Your Honor.
All right, and I should have put this on record earlier, but there is a stipulation that this matter may be electronically recorded. Ms. Crawford, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, go ahead.
Your Honor, I have provided the petitioner with 5 exhibits. They are Exhibit 1. It's a memo to the board from the probation analyst, Amanda Cantrell, who is here if the board has any questions. I would like to introduce that memo into evidence at this time.
Any objection, Mr. Cologne?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 1 will be received.
Exhibit 2 is the petition for early termination of probation, along with the attachments in support that I'd like to mark and introduce.
Any objection, Mr. Cologne?
No, Your Honor.
The petition itself will be admitted for all purposes. The letters attached in support will be admitted as administrative hearsay.
Exhibit 3 is the decision in the matter of the petition for reinstatement of license of Ruben Gabriel Cologne, along with the default decision and order and the underlying accusation. Would like that marked and introduced.
Any objection, Mr. Cologne?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 4 will be admitted.
I think I said that was Exhibit 4,
You're
and I
right.
meant to say 3.
I'm skipping ahead. Exhibit 3 will be admitted.
Exhibit 4 is the certification of registration history.
Any objection to Exhibit 4, Mr. Cologne?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 4 is now admitted.
And Exhibit 5 is the notification of hearing to the petitioner of today's hearing date.
Any objection, Mr. Cologne?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
I have no additional evidence to present at this time.
All right. Mr. Cologne, do you wish to testify this morning?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Just so we know, do you intend to call any witnesses?
No, I do not.
All right. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you'll give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Would you please state and spell your full name for our record?
My full name is Ruben Gabriel Cologne. That's RUBEN GABRIEL COLON.
Your Honor, if I may interrupt, would the board be inclined to hear a little background about the case prior to Mr. Cologne's testimony?
Oh, I thought you said you had nothing further.
I'm sorry. I meant that I had no further evidence, but I can provide background if the board wishes.
That'd be helpful. Sorry, Mr. Cologne. Just a minute.
My apologies for being unclear. The petitioner was issued a licensed clinical social worker license on August 30th of 2013, and that will expire on April 30th of 2024. An accusation was filed on April 20th of 2015, and the petitioner failed to file a notice of defense. A default revoking his license became effective October 16th of 2015. The circumstances underlying the accusation were that on January 22nd of 2015, the petitioner was convicted for being under the influence of controlled substances and unlawfully causing a fire to property. He also failed to report his conviction to the board. The petitioner was taken into custody on a 5150 welfare hold based on his being a danger to himself or others. Neighbors had called the police because petitioner was seen waving a machete, cutting trees, and dancing around in his front yard. When officers responded, he made bizarre statements and exhibited bizarre behaviors. On February 12th of 2019, the petitioner filed a petition for reinstatement of his license, which was granted. His license was placed on 3 years probation, effective April 1st, 2020. 9 months remain on his probationary period. As part of his probation, the petitioner was required to attend a psychological evaluation, weekly psychotherapy, abstain from alcohol and controlled substances unless prescribed to him, submit to biological fluid testing, and to pay costs. He is compliant with his probation. Thank you, Your Honor. I apologize for the interruption.
No need to apologize. Thank you, Ms. Crawford. All right, Mr. Cologne, you are under oath. I'm going to allow you to testify freely. This is your opportunity to tell the board what you think it needs to know and to explain a little bit about your rehabilitative efforts, okay?
Okay.
So I'll turn the floor over to you.
Good morning, Your Honor, and members of the board. I appreciate this opportunity to come before the board and request early termination of my conditions of probation. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have participated in this process of proving to the board and the public that my rehabilitation efforts have been effective for the purpose of ensuring that I am fit and safe to practice psychotherapy for the public. I'd like to mention some successful strategies that I have incorporated along the way to ensure that I am safe and fit for practice. First of all, I've committed myself to a healthy diet and exercise regimen in which it's been instrumental in helping me to maintain my physical and mental wellness. I've found it very critical and help so that I could take care of myself, sleep better, and make sure that I'm functioning at my most optimal levels possible. Another thing that I've really put an emphasis on, something that I didn't do when the first occasion occurred when I had gotten in trouble, is I've maintained a strong connection to my circle of support. I haven't isolated myself. I'm grateful for my lovely, beloved wife who's here in support of me, and I've been able to reach out to other loved ones to help support me along the way. Also, I've faithfully participated in weekly wellness groups that have a focus on the Red Road to Recovery, and that's also been very instrumental in helping me to maintain my recovery, avoid any relapse, and make sure that I'm also connected to the spiritual domain of my life and keeping that area also healthy. One of the things that I found of utmost importance is my participation in weekly therapy sessions. Prior to being in under the discipline of the probation with the Board of Behavioral Sciences, I had only participated in therapy once for about maybe a couple sessions. And the requirement to participate in weekly sessions has really opened my eyes to the importance of really understanding what it's like to be on the other side of the chair. So these past 2+ years that I've been in therapy, I've found very empowering, and I've found it very instrumental in helping me be able to get to the root of what it was that got me here in the first place. So understanding what it is to be on the other side of the chair and what it is to work out rooted issues in therapy is something that I found very valuable during this process. And along the way, I think timing was very empowering in my life too, because when I first had my license reinstated, it happened all around the time that the pandemic occurred and the shelter-in-place orders went into effect. So during the past 2 years, I've been able to start a private practice, which I did part-time for the first couple of years, and now I'm very glad to say that I'm now in full-time private practice. It's flourished, and I've been able to help a lot of individuals along the way. So I'm grateful that I'm able to help different communities like first responders. I get a lot of requests from social workers from Child Protective Services or the district attorneys to help with different situations and cases that need of help. So I'm so enthused, and I feel blessed for this opportunity to once again practice what I love to do, which is psychotherapy. it's something that I think comes very naturally for me to be able to help others in this type of way. I feel that I'm very effective and skillful. I'm able to make great connections with others. And during these past couple of years that I've been able to help others as a clinician, I've found a lot of fulfillment in being able to help during these critical times. That's all I have to say for now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cologne. Ms. Crawford.
Are you still on criminal probation in any criminal case?
No, I'm not.
When did that end? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sure. When did that criminal probation end?
The criminal probation ended back in October of 2015. I successfully finished the diversion program, and it actually coincided with when my license was revoked, I believe, as well.
Okay. And you completed a drug treatment program, is that right?
That's correct.
What was helpful to you in that drug treatment program in becoming and maintaining sobriety?
For me, I think accountability to myself and the public, being able to pay restitution to the community was very helpful. But I think especially being accountable for my actions and knowing that the justice system the intent was to help me and to help me recover and regain my wellness. So one of the things I learned is how to kind of go with the flow of a situation, not get overwhelmed, and face the situations at hand with maturity and with determination and with the optimism that I can overcome difficult circumstances.
Do you consider yourself an addict?
No, I do not.
Do you believe you had substance abuse problems?
Yes, I did have substance abuse problems at one point.
And what were the substances that you abused?
Around the time of 2015, summer of 2014, I was introduced, I'm still not sure what it was some sort of an amphetamine. I'm not sure if it was MDMA or methamphetamine, but when I started using that substance, I decompensated really quick. It was within a matter of months that I think a lot of different domains in my life were impacted. And unfortunately, even though I stopped using, I believe that some of the lingering side effects of those drugs may have caused some difficulty with my functioning, even after I stopped using. However, once I was arrested in January of 2015, thankfully that was the last time I encountered any experience with any of those substances.
Are there any substances that you continue to use today?
The only substance that I continue to use, I have a doctor's recommendation for medical cannabis, that I use to address symptoms of insomnia, and that's the only substance that I currently use for medical purposes.
Is there a dosage amount for the prescription that you have to address your insomnia?
Unfortunately, I don't have any particular guidelines from a physician in particular about dosages, but the dosages that I do use are for the purpose of trying to fall asleep and stay asleep. So the dosages that I use can be considered rather on the high range. I often resort to using edible cannabis because it's able to maintain a longer lasting effect and help me stay asleep. So I would say that I average maybe about anywhere from 1 to 2 grams per day of medical cannabis. It's an approximate estimate of what works for me.
And you stated in your testimony that you believe that a healthy diet and exercise is critical to your mental health and to help you sleep better. Do you find that that is not sufficient to help you sleep without the aid of the cannabis?
I have tried just exercise. However, I've struggled to maintain my sleep hygiene effectively without the medical cannabis. Over the years, I've kind of found a sweet spot in terms of the dosages that work for me, and I've maintained that same treatment regimen in order to optimize my sleep hygiene.
How long have you been using the cannabis to help with your insomnia?
I've used the cannabis to help my insomnia for approximately about 8 years.
And during your once-a-month testing, that is something that shows up on your drug test results? Are
That's
you aware
correct.
of that? Okay.
Yes, it does.
Now, you came before the board, let's see, it appears to have been in (2020) in order to have your license reinstated because it had been revoked.
Correct.
And did you read the decision that the board issued when they granted your license?
Yes, I did.
So I want to ask you about a decision, or rather some statements that the board made.
Okay.
And in your exhibit packet, this would be in Exhibit 3. And let me refer you to exact page number. And it's AGO 18, which would be page 8 of the board's decision. sorry, page 7, beginning in paragraph 16. And the board here discusses your use of a tincture of marijuana that contains THC. Do you remember discussing that with the board during your reinstatement hearing?
Correct. That was the edible that I had mentioned that has been working for me.
And you indicated that you would be willing to refrain from use of any substances containing the THC.
Correct.
Okay. The board also went on in that decision to indicate that that use was a concern for them, but since you had indicated a willingness to refrain, that they felt you would be safe to practice on probation. Do you recall that?
I do recall that.
Now, you have not refrained from using substances containing THC. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
So why did you tell the board that you could refrain from that use when, when you are not refraining?
I told the board that I was willing to refrain from the use because for me, I wanted to take a whatever it takes approach to getting my license reinstated and going back to clinical practice. Now, I'm not sure if I would have resorted to other types of aids for sleeping. When I started the probation process, during my orientation with one of the analysts, it was mentioned to me that I had the option of presenting to the board a doctor's recommendation for medical cannabis use. And I decided myself to make an attempt to have that option since it had been successful for my sleep hygiene. I figured that rather than trying to invent the wheel and maybe use pharmaceuticals to help me fall asleep, that I would use a method that was working for me in the past. So during that orientation, when I was informed that I did have the opportunity to consider a cannabis recommendation from a physician, I took that opportunity to have that option.
So on that same page 8, just before paragraph 17, the board's decision says, additionally, petitioner should be required to abstain from using alcohol or controlled substances, including THC. I understand you were provided an option. How did you reconcile your choice of continuing to take THC with what the board had indicated to you was important for them to determine whether you're rehabilitated and safe to practice?
For me, that decision was made because of my personal experience in the medical cannabis being effective in targeting that particular symptom of insomnia. The situation which led to the criminal conviction wasn't necessarily about cannabis. It was another controlled substance, the amphetamine. I think that was found in my system, which was the issue. So I made that decision based on what was successful for me in the past and knowing that I was able to effectively and safely treat my condition with that particular aid.
Are there any parameters around how frequently your prescription is renewed by your by the medical professional that is prescribing you the medical cannabis?
My medical recommendation from a physician is in place for 1 calendar year from the time that I obtain the recommendation, and I have to get a renewal on the cannabis recommendation on a yearly basis.
What is the Red Road to Recovery?
The Red Road to Recovery is a method in which First Nations people have a framework and an approach in which we address wellness and recovery. Similar to AA, there is different beliefs and values within the Red Road to Recovery approach, which incorporates the history of our ancestors and also traditional healing methods that work for people of First Nations. So things like sweat lodge, ceremonial dance, ceremonial song. We use these traditional ways as a method to maintain our recovery and wellness in ways that are traditional to our way of life. So that's why we call it Red Road to Recovery, meaning the red road is like a warrior's road, a red road.
Is this a program that you're in as part of your probation term?
Yes. It was suggested that I participate in some type of wellness groups like AA, and since I have participated in a Red Road to Recovery group for many, many years, I figured I would use the Red Road to Recovery as a means to help my recovery process instead of the traditional AA approach.
Are there sponsors or anything like sponsors in this program?
Yes, we do have elders who are there in our community to offer counsel, to lend an ear, to be able to consult with regarding life matters. So in our cultural circle, the elders play an important role in helping those that belong to the circle.
And is there, or I should say, what is the structure of how recovery is addressed? For example, in AA, there's the big book, there's the 12-step program. What does the Red Road to Recovery have?
The Red Road to Recovery has many different concepts, but to name a few are, for instance, the importance of maintaining our participation in ceremonial traditional practices. There's also the idea that alcohol and other illicit drugs are something that we should refrain from doing because it could have a negative impact in our lives. Another concept is the idea of the circle and how we're not alone, and we have individuals and groups that we can reach out to if there is a need for assistance. And overall, there's a lot of different concepts that we use in order to help guide our lives. For instance, one of the instruments that's critical on the Red Road to Recovery is the concept of the medicine wheel. And the medicine wheel goes into 4 different quadrants. I'll give you an example of how our lives we need to focus on our physical wellness, our emotional, mental wellness, our social wellness, our social groups, but also the 4th one, our spiritual domain. So having different tools, having different frameworks and approaches that can help us to guide ourselves in our ways, in our path of life, is really what the Red Road to Recovery is all about. Having somewhat of a compass and having direction in life, having a circle of support, whom we can go to, elders whom can counsel us, are some concepts about the Red Road to Recovery.
Since alcohol and illicit substances are discouraged, what is the program's stance on the use of marijuana for the purposes that you're using it for?
Mm-hmm. There are different perspectives depending on the elders that you speak with. There might be some elders who have a very conservative approach in which they say, well, that plant medicine is from another continent. It was not from the Americas, so we don't encourage that use of that plant medicine. Others have a more flexible mindset in which they might feel that the Creator provided humanity with this plant medicine to be able to use, so therefore it should be open and available to humanity as a human right. So not all elders see things in the same light, and I want to recognize that sometimes it depends on who you ask.
Did you participate, or have you participated in other programs that are a little more similar to AA's requirement of complete abstinence from any substances?
When I was incarcerated, I did participate in group therapy, sessions in which we discussed substance abuse. So that was one format that I did participate in while I was incarcerated.
Was there anything you learned about the use of any substances, illicit substances, that could endanger sobriety or mental health?
What I learned is, from my experience, and I would have never thought I had to learn it, but I think I was somewhat naive to the idea that someone could decompensate so quickly because of a substance. I, for a long time, had feared and really looked down upon certain drugs like amphetamines, and I would have never thought that I myself, would have experimented or even experienced difficulties with that substance. So this idea that not entertaining the thought of just a little try or nothing's going to happen. I think from my experience, I've learned that there are substances that are definitely have significant concerns and reasons why we should stay away from them, how that's not therapeutical in any kind of manner. And I learned the impact of how destructive certain substances can be and how they can affect someone's life in such a short period of time. So I think for me, it's created a tremendous, in a way, respect and concern for not only myself, but anyone in particular using certain substances that can really destroy people's lives.
You've been attending counseling for the last 2 years?
Yes, I have.
Has it been weekly?
It's been weekly therapy, yes.
Okay. What were your goals for weekly therapy?
My goals for weekly therapy have included focusing on my wellness and recovery in terms of making sure that I'm using effective coping skills and not unhealthy coping skills. I've also, another goal of my therapy has been to try to get to the root of what I may have been going through during my midlife crisis and how to put things in perspective and learn from my past experiences. And also part of my focus has been on expanding my professional capabilities towards moving to independent private practice as well.
What have you determined led to that? You mentioned it as a midlife crisis. I'm assuming you're referring to what led to your arrest and conviction in 2015?
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn about what you were going through that led to that?
What I learned from what I went through is how it's important to stay connected with a circle of support. How it's important that when life stressors become overwhelming, how we have to have a plan in place to foresee any difficult circumstances, have different strategies on how to address concerns that come up. I also learned how effective therapy can be in situations like that, and how I can access and prompt myself into seeking out different resources when I need them. Another thing I think I learned through my past experience is how much I really value the opportunity to do clinical practice and how important it is for me to feel that I'm fulfilling my mission and I'm helping others. So really beginning to value and cherish what I've worked so hard to attain. So for me, I've learned that it takes a conscious effort to preserve that. And it's something that I have to, in an ongoing way, keep up, make sure that I'm at my optimal best because I myself am the tool in therapy. That if I'm not doing well, then I'm not going to be able to do my work effectively. So that's another thing that I recognize during this process.
Does your therapist specialize in holistic or integrated therapy or EMDR therapy as the board had suggested you seek out on page 8 of its decision?
Yes, my therapist uses an integrative model in her approach to therapy. And I found her approach to be very effective in meeting my treatment needs. She also comes from a trauma-informed approach, which I think has also been very key in her being able to understand some of my history and help me to recover from some of the root issues that I had.
Have you done any EMDR therapy?
No, I have not done EMDR therapy. I think that there's a limited amount of therapists who are trained in that manner, and I think that for me, in choosing a therapist, I wanted to make sure that the therapy that I was receiving had more of an integration approach in which I could benefit from a few different models of therapy like CBT and systems therapy. I didn't want to limit myself to just one therapeutical approach.
Why are you asking for your probation to be terminated early?
I'm asking for my probation to be terminated early because I would like to continue my endeavors to expand my private practice and possibly even continue my education. Unfortunately, I've refrained from applying for authorization with different insurance panels because sometimes I've found that having to provide the background history at times may have not been favorable in my attempts to become an authorized provider for panels. Even though it hasn't limited me, I am an authorized provider for a couple of health insurance panels, and I receive a lot of referrals through those, and so it didn't 100% hinder my ability to become an authorized provider with different insurance panels, but I would definitely like to have the opportunity to apply without having to have any of having to disclose the previous incidences that occurred, as I have been. Another thing is I've always had the ambition to continue my studies, and I would like to consider applying for a graduate program and furthering my studies, but I'd rather, when I apply hopefully with the status of a clear license and without the terms of probation.
Is your current work 100% your private practice?
That's correct, yes it is.
Okay. And when you were first placed on probation, what was your work?
When I was first placed on probation, My work was as the Diversity and Inclusion Specialist for the San Andreas Regional Center.
Did that involve any kind of clinical, were you involved in a clinical therapeutic setting?
There were parts of the job duties that were clinical. For instance, I facilitated a parent therapy group on the weekends. So my clinical skills in group facilitation came in very handy during that time in my role as diversity and inclusion specialist. And also, I helped during the pandemic to fill in for some different cases. So I was doing assessments from time to time, which also involved a clinical role for me.
And did you have any other employment prior to opening your own practice?
No, I was just employed with the San Andreas Regional Center, and my private practice began as a part-time business at first.
When did that start?
My private practice started approximately in August of 2020.
How did you obtain your clients?
I started off by developing a Psychology Today profile on Psychology Today website. And another thing I did is I visited the Child Protective Service agency that I used to work for, the Department of Family and Children Services at the Santa Clara County. And there was a group of social workers who I used to work with. They were ex-colleagues, and they used to refer me clients when I used to work for the hospital system many years ago. And I regained the contacts for some of my referral sources. So they started sending me clients as well, and I obtained cash pay clients through Psychology Today. So some of my referrals were through the Child Protective Agency, and some of my referrals were through cash pay. Later on, I was able to be approved for a couple of insurance panels after that.
And have you had the need to notify your patients of your probation status?
Yes, there have been times, especially when I apply for authorization and for insurance panels. I've had to submit the court order in order to inform that about my probationary status, so I have let clients know.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Crawford. We'll open it up for the board, starting with Ms. Ortega.
Hi, Mr. Cologne.
Hello,
Thank you
Ms.
for
Ortega.
sharing what stayed with me was like the warrior journey, and really hear you being on that path. I had a question. Are you in any therapist support groups? Because I know private practice can sometimes be very isolating, right? And so we have to seek support, right, like ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So are you part of any groups?
Not particularly a therapy group, but I am part of a men's social worker support group. Not everyone in the group is a clinician. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But again, these are some colleagues that I had when I worked for the Child Welfare Agency, some of them for the county hospital system. So I've been able to maintain some of the contacts and friendships that I've had through this men's support group, but it's not specific to therapists. It's more specific to social workers.
And how often do you meet?
We meet maybe on a quarterly basis.
Okay.
We meet, yeah.
And is there a space where you have conversations with any peers around transference, countertransference?
We usually meet in the community over dinner, so it's somewhat of it's a non-formal, more of a relaxed atmosphere, peer support method that our group exists. It's more open-ended in the discussion matters, but the good thing is that whoever attends the group has the opportunity to bring forth whatever matters that they might be dealing with, and I think we kind of try to look at things from a social worker, Latino, and also a male perspective.
Okay. And in therapy, do you ever bring up, if any clients bring up any?
Yeah. When I've needed consultation, I've usually consulted with my therapist about different matters where I might need another perspective.
Okay. I have another question. Can you share a little bit about your journey with insomnia? Do you know what's at the source? Have you tried alternative treatments inside of therapy to manage something that I know can be very difficult for a lot of people outside of the marijuana use?
I haven't tried any other methods, whether they be holistic or pharmaceutical. I am a bit reluctant to try anything that could be habit forming. So other than exercise, and one of the things that I've tried, and it's been somewhat helpful, is modifying my awake and sleep hours. So it's something as simple as going to sleep earlier, waking up earlier, so that way by a certain time, by 10, 11, I'm already tired. Because I've found that if I'm up later at night, then I might have a tendency to wake up later and just gradually move towards a later time frame of being up. So ever since I was young, I think I've been more of a night owl. But for me and my business, I need to operate, according to when business happens. So it's definitely been something that I've made significant efforts to modify my sleeping schedule, so that way by the end of the night I feel tired already, and that's been helpful. So just modifying my sleep schedule is actually something that's been helpful.
And would you be open to exploring that further with your therapist? There's insomnia-based cognitive behavioral therapy, right, where it's there are techniques for people to sleep. There's also some natural supplements that people get from their primary care doctors. There's mindfulness practices. So would you be open to exploring additional treatments?
I definitely would be. I forgot to mention that around May of 2020, I started trying melatonin, and it worked with limited results. For me, I would feel that I would start to get tired, but if I didn't successfully fall asleep, once I passed the drowsy period, then it didn't matter. I would still stay up because it's almost like there was a window period. If I missed it, then, and then another thing is being able to stay asleep. It might have helped me at times to fall asleep, but I think the staying asleep is something that the medical cannabis has been able to target that a little bit better. But I am open and willing to try different things as well.
Thank you. My last question is, I heard the different stances of like the elders inside of the program, the Red Road to Recovery. What's your stance on plant medicine? And is that something you're still exploring?
My stance is that even though I identify as a person of color, someone with indigenous roots to these lands, that I'm open to other holistic ways of receiving help. For me also, I think one thing that is also beneficial to the cannabis is that for me, I also see it as somewhat of a spiritual practice in terms of connection with the elements, with nature, having somewhat of a type of a relationship, almost like a connection to the universe. We have connections with people. We might have connections with animals, pets, and I think it's very natural to also have connections with plants too. I think I like to be traditional in my approach to life, so I like to incorporate things that have been effective for long periods of time, and I think that there's a lot of maybe lived evidence of how it can be helpful, but hopefully the research more and more that's been done can shed more light on how it's of help.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Artea.
Mr. Hupt?
Thank you for your insightful and very vulnerable conversation. I have a couple questions. I just want to be clear. In the board packet, it sounds like there were some of the drug use was related to spiritual and cultural practices. To what extent are you continuing to use any drugs outside of THC?
I don't. THC is the only substance that I've found effective, and I think has been allowed. Of course, I don't want to again risk any consequences. So for me, I haven't really felt the need to explore with any other type of substances because I feel that my needs are being met and I've been stable and I've kind of found the sweet spot.
Great, thank you for that clarification. To what extent do you experience the effects of THC during psychotherapy work?
The effects during? Well, since I use THC for insomnia, usually I don't experience any effect because I use it in order to sleep. So usually around 8, 9 o'clock at night is when I do the dosage of edibles. So it's always after my appointments with clients and before I go to bed. Typically about an hour before I intend to sleep is when I administer the THC so that I can feel sedated and effectively fall asleep.
Great, thank you. And my last question, I think you've talked quite a bit about a lot of efforts, tremendous efforts that you've put forward over the last few years to improve your quality of life and your quality of work. Can you talk a little bit about you as a therapist now and what that work looks like as opposed to you as a therapist, say, 5 years ago?
Oh, okay, great question. Like I mentioned, just having the experience of sitting on the other side of the chair has been very valuable for me, because now that I do therapy for others, I can empathize with what it's like to go through the process of analyzing, of trying to gain insight, of challenging oneself, of facing one's past. So I can very much more respect, empathize, and be more compassionate in my practice now that I've actually been through the process of therapy. I know that some MFT programs, it's actually a requirement, and for social workers, most programs, it's not a requirement. And I could really now see the value of why certain programs have participation in therapy services as part of their academic program as well. I see a lot of value in that, when maybe before I would have questioned it. So now I actually think, wow, how could I have not gone through therapy and be a therapist? Another, I think, thing that I'm grateful for is, which goes again to Mrs. Ortega's question, is I've been seeking out more opportunities to associate with other clinicians. So I recently reached out to an organization that has yearly conferences. They present papers and their research. And actually, one of the requirements to be part of this group is that you have to have at least 200 hours of individual therapy for yourself. So prior to being under BBS probation, I probably wouldn't have been able to fulfill that requirement. But since I've been in therapy for the past 2 years, I can gratefully say, yes, I do qualify to be part of that group. And so part of this group is they see the value in oneself as a clinician going through the therapy yourself. So I found that as an asset too.
Hi, I'm Yvette. I'm a public member. Thank you for sharing your story. You've touched on so many things and given us a real clear picture of your journey, but I want to, you've talked about healthy coping mechanisms. Can you give me one example of a healthy coping mechanism that you like?
Sure. One healthy coping mechanism that I'll give an example of is music. There might be times where I can use use music as a coping mechanism, depending on the situation. If I'm feeling a little down and sad, I can play a little bit of music, whether it be on the guitar or the Native American flute, and I can almost find immediate alleviation from whatever I'm going through, a connection maybe with myself. Another thing is music has helped me to connect with others on the social circles. Every year we have an Aztec New Year, and this past March we had a huge event, a lot of people, and I was responsible for organizing and conducting the musicians for the ceremony. So I think music has also helped me to maintain a connection with others through music. So making sure I don't get isolated, and having an altruistic type sense when I contribute with my music. It's very therapeutic on many different levels, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and socially.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Willis.
Mr. Disposti?
Actually, I don't have any further questions. I just wanted to thank you for being here today and for sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Disposti.
Mr. Jones?
Hi, thank you for being here. You have a very compelling story. I just wanted to clarify, can you tell me a little bit more about how you notify clients that you're on probation?
Usually during the first session is I say a little bit about myself, and I let them know that my license is currently active without any restrictions. However, I am under probation, probationary, and usually I don't get too much questions, but every now and then I do get questions, and it allows me the opportunity to emphasize that not only do I have clinical knowledge and expertise through my education, but there's also lived experience that I can rely on in terms of being able to empathize and be compassionate towards others.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Sovek?
Hi, John Sovek, LMFT, pronouns he, him. What pronouns would you like me to use to address you?
I would prefer he, him, his.
Okay, thank you. I have a question that's kind of been developing as you've been speaking with my fellow board members. And like just now, the thing came up when Mr. Jones asked you about how do you inform clients, and you used the word usually. You are supposed to inform every client that you interact with.
Yeah.
I've also noticed that there was a recommendation from the previous board work that EMDR would be good. They recommended you abstain from cannabis use. In some of the questions here, Ms. Ortega said, hey, have you considered other forms of sleep to help with your sleep? Professional consultation. And what I hear from you constantly, these words, willingness and openness. And yet at the same time, if I listen carefully to your answers, you've actually dismissed all of these recommendations. And I'd be curious to know how you can assuage my concerns about this, that you got some real specific recommendations, both previously from the board, from the legal requirements of your probation, and from some experts here on the panel. This dichotomy between willingness and openness, and what to my ears often sounds like dismissal at the same time. Could you help me with that?
Yeah, well, in terms of some of the things that may have been recommended that I haven't tried personally yet, like I mentioned, I can't comment on them because of lack of experience, but yes, there has been a willingness to not use the medical cannabis as a means, and I didn't try to go that route. I actually did decide to continue with treating my conditions the way that they were. So maybe I need to actually explore and try other things before I can actually determine whether they're effective or not. I think it's just my my lack of experience in trying other things. I mean, I have a tendency to do what works for me, and but along the way, I have learned new things to incorporate in my wellness and recovery. But it may be that rather than just being open and willing, I may need to change that to actually more action-based and actually doing and actually saying, I tried this, I tried that, I did this and do that. I appreciate that observation, Mr. Stovek. I think I need to consider how I can improve in that area.
Because the one thing, although I was not on the board at the time of this decision, in my experience with the board, usually when they look at something, we look at it very thoroughly. Mm-hmm. And when a recommendation is offered, something really direct like EMDR, there must have been something that was happening in that particular testimony, in that moment, that the board took the time to discuss amongst themselves and actually put that in this. And so the idea that you are saying, I'm open and willing, and yet at the same time dismissed pursuing it, is really challenging to hear. And so that brings up concerns to me about other aspects of this probation. So that's where I'm coming from. So thank you so much. I know it's kind of aggressive, but sometimes I get really clear and it comes off as aggressive.
No, I don't see it as threatening at all. I appreciate your insight and calling these things to my attention.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Dr. Walker?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to continue along the same lines of questioning, if you will, because I too have similar thoughts along the previous board's recommendations to you. And if Ms. Crawford or yourself could please, if I'm out of line or misrepresenting what was communicated, please check me, okay? But I believe it was on page 8, paragraph 17, where you made reference to the board's exhibit of their recommendation of the THC, is that correct? Yes, THC. Could you, for myself and other folks that may not be aware of what that is, could you please define what THC is?
I don't know if I can pronounce the whole name, but THC is the active ingredient in cannabis that produces the medicinal effects. Tetrahydrochloride,
okay.
Something to that degree.
Okay, just for the record, what was the date for that board that was given for that example, the board recommendation?
April 1st of
2020, okay. And was that a public hearing as well? That was, okay. So we've almost come full circle here. A very short period of time, even though these were uncertain times, you're very clear in stating where your state of mind and your physical presence was, as you shared with us that it was a situation regarding your midlife crisis that led up to the situations, and you clearly stated that it wasn't related to your use of a substance that contained the THC, correct? So you're kind of moving us away from the relevance or importance of that board recommendation from the way that you put it out there. So I just want to state that, but I also do respect the board's previous recommendations and your openness and your willingness to say that you would take that into consideration. However, I too see that there were several opportunities for you to make good on that rapport with you and the board, and I don't see where that's happened. So in this moment, as a new public member, okay, I would like to hear from you what further warrants you to bring this request for a petition for early termination on anything other than what you stated, that to continue your private practice and your education, to kind of work around, this is what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, work around disclosing your past criminal history, not only to possibly future employers or clients. So what further warrants your request to this board other than what you've already stated to grant this petition for early termination? Because we're here, we're like the Honorable Judge said, we're looking at your rehabilitation. So tell me, I need to see and hear something more from you. Because I don't hear where when you work with the previous board, that whatever the recommendations were made, maybe we missed something for you where you didn't take those recommendations, to heart, some of them. If you're so open and willing to do so, how would I be sure that, where we go from here is going to be beneficial not only to you, but to the public?
Right.
Okay?
Well, as I mentioned before about my therapist, one of the things that I appreciated about her is that she takes a trauma-informed approach to her work. And my understanding about the EMDR recommendation is that that may have been a recommendation by the board to maybe address past traumas. So, again, my therapist is not certified in EMDR. Usually you have to have some type of formal, comprehensive training to do EMDR. I mean, even amongst my colleagues, I don't know anyone in particular who's certified in EMDR. And I have to be honest, I mean, myself, I was certified in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which is another method of addressing trauma. And me personally, I feel more confident about that approach. And I have been working out that, using cognitive behavioral therapy, which is an evidence-based practice, in a trauma-informed way to address the concerns that the board might have about any unresolved trauma. So my therapist and I have been diligently working on trying to get to the root issues of what it could have been that led me to those actions on that day when I got into trouble. Another thing I might say about the THC as well is that initially I wasn't required to undergo psychological evaluation. But at some point, I believe the probation analyst had some concerns, like yourself, about some of the THC use. So as a means to make sure that I was fit and safe to practice, the probation analyst initiated a psychological evaluation to try to make sure that these concerns weren't something that the board had to further address. So I did participate and undergo psychological evaluation, and I'm grateful, and I was glad to have gone through the process in order to be able to demonstrate to the board that my treatment approach at the time was appropriate and didn't pose a safety threat to the community.
Okay, interesting. My segue there would be that we're here to protect and serve. When we go back to your openness and willingness to consider the recommendations that the board brought forth to you, I'm almost interpreting what you were saying and what was read to us, that it was by any means necessary, and I don't see that there was a follow-through there, which for me means, has the rehabilitation fully been completed? So in your thoughts, or in your own words, you just really share that there are other things that you could possibly do and try that were recommended to you and you haven't, and other thoughts that may have come to and through you from the work that you've done on your own health and wellness. Right. So I'm still seeing that there's still room there for greater rehabilitation. And so I thank you for your testimony today. I really do.
Thank you, Dr. Walker.
Thank you. Mr. Ehrlich?
Hi, good morning, Mr. Cologne.
Good morning.
Thanks for your testimony today. I just had a few things I kind of wanted to clarify, if you can bear with me here. First being, I know it's been brought up about previous board recommendations as far as EMDR versus what you've been doing as far as cognitive-based treatment. Just to be clear, those were recommendations by the board, right?
Right.
That's correct. They didn't. The board didn't force you to do one versus another. Is that correct?
Correct.
In your clinical practice, if you had a patient come to you and wanted to use one I guess type practice or another, would you tell that person that they were wrong for choosing one that worked for them versus another approach that may not?
No, I wouldn't tell them they're wrong about it. Just like EMDR, right? I wouldn't tell someone that I wouldn't recommend them doing that because I believe in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. I don't fully understand. I haven't received formal training in EMDR, so that may be an approach that, for me, might not make sense, or I might not feel that it's for me. If someone in the community mentions something that is key and effective in their wellness and recovery, I would encourage that, even if it didn't quite resonate or agree with my particular framework or approach. I really much believe in the concept of self-determination and person-centered approach.
In other words, whichever type of treatment worked for them, they should pursue. Okay. Being on probation, I know I oftentimes like to find out why somebody wants to terminate probation early. Can you maybe give a couple reasons? I know that you had spoken about one factor being that it can be a barrier to business in the sense of getting on panels for insurance companies. Are there other personal reasons for you wanting to get off? Because I think you got about a year left or so. So is there a reason why you want to terminate probation early, aside from, let's say, the insurance panels?
Well, I think simply to be able to complete the process. And one of the things that has been challenging at times is making sure that I cross all the T's, dot all the I's. I call in for my testing, and it takes a lot of conscious effort to make sure that I remain in compliance, and it takes a lot of energy. So I would like to maybe focus some of those energies on other areas, like I mentioned, possibly returning to school to further my education, or develop my practice. I've actually learned to look forward to testing, because then, I feel like, okay, I got it out of the way, and I'm done for the month. But still, it takes effort to, even though you've tested, you still have to call every day. It's a discipline. It's something that takes time and energy. So simply to be able to focus some of my time and energy on other areas, I see that as another benefit.
Okay. And just switching gears to the you're suffering with insomnia. Around when were you formally diagnosed with insomnia? Is there a time in which, or a year when you were diagnosed with this?
I've experienced insomnia since I was a child. Okay. I've never received a prescription medication or had any sleep studies or anything like that.
Have there been things in the past, like since you were a child, that had helped you sleep, or has it always been a struggle until some years ago when you started using THC?
It's always been a struggle for me.
Were there things that you had tried during that period? I mean, I would imagine if this is over the course of, maybe decades, are there other things that you've tried to help with it?
Melatonin is one thing that I've tried. Modifying my sleep and wake schedule is another thing that I've tried. And it's been helpful to a certain degree. But I feel that when I'm able to integrate all the strategies, my sleep schedule and the sleep aid, and also a bedtime routine, kind of making it somewhat of a ritual, is another thing, a strategy that I try to do. And other simple things like trying to set up the room to where it enhances my ability to fall asleep, avoiding cell phone or screens during that bedtime. Those are all strategies that I try to use in conjunction with the THC.
And then how long have you been using the THC to help with sleep?
About 8 years.
8 years? Okay. Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Eller.
Thank you. Mr. Ranasinghe?
Hello, Mr. Cologne, and it was very interesting learning about the Red Road to Recovery. Thank you so much for speaking about that. I appreciate the compelling and very honest testimony you've provided. Let me just cut to the chase. How do we know that the use of THC won't progress into a substitute addiction?
I think you can rest assured because, like I mentioned, the timeline that I've been using, the aid effectively, it's nothing new. It's a long-term effective strategy that I've had. Another thing is, due to some of the concerns you mentioned, I was directed to undergo psychological evaluation, and I believe it was determined that the THC substance use wasn't a concern, that it was a targeted effort to alleviate my symptoms of insomnia, and that it wasn't progressional in terms of being going towards an addiction.
Have you remained on the same dose for the past 8 years, or has it progressed or increased?
I would say it's my first couple of years. I didn't use edibles as much. I would, the method of delivery used to be more smoking cannabis, but I found how the edible method of delivery was just much more effective. So about 6 years ago is when I switched over to either a tincture or edible method of delivery, and I've remained with that strategy ever since.
After the board's decision in the previous hearing, did you ever try going off?
Actually, right before I was going to start my probation, I wasn't sure that I wasn't aware I was going to have the opportunity to submit a physician's recommendation for the use of cannabis. So I did go about a month. without using any cannabis. My insomnia was hard to manage during that time, but when I was informed that I had the option, I decided to request the physician's recommendation. It was approved, and once I resumed that form of treatment, I found immediate alleviation from my symptoms of insomnia.
I don't want to get too far into your health care, but you said that you renew your prescription about every year. Are you also under the care of a periodic psychiatrist or general practitioner who kind of manages the THC?
Not for medical reasons. Sometimes I have discussions with my therapist about how things are going, experiences if they do come up. So she's right now the only health professional that I consult with regarding my THC consumption.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Cologne. I appreciate it. No further questions.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Anything further, Ms. Crawford?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
Thank you, I apologize. Just a couple of follow-up questions. Listening to Mr. Sovek and his approach, I don't know that you answered Kelly's question. Since you started the edibles, has your dosage changed over the last 6 years?
It might vary less than a half a gram, but like I mentioned, it's remained constant to about a gram to 2 grams a day. It hasn't varied much at all.
And then do you inform every client that you have that you are on probation?
I inform parents. I usually don't inform children. But whoever has the authority to sign consent, that's who I inform.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Cologne, as I said when we started, you won't have a decision today. After the hearing, the board will go into closed session for deliberations, okay? Have I overlooked anything, Ms. Crawford? All right, so with that, Mr. Cologne, that concludes your petition hearing in this matter. Record is closed, case is submitted, and we are off the record, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Have a good day, sir.
You too.
Thank you, Your Honor, as well.